Well, hey everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I'm Katie, joined by Chris. John is
Hello.
off on a super secret mission that we can't talk about, aka he's at the dentist. But he'd probably rather be on a super top secret mission. I think most of us would.
Yeah.
So this week we are talking about how to identify generative AI use cases. We are going to review what the major use cases are for generative AI, how to identify use cases for your own personal use, personal, professional, and how to build an action plan with your use cases. So, Chris, let's start with the technological elephant in the room. What the heck are you wearing?
This is a good analogy for generative AI use cases. So this strange contraption
Mhm.
is a stable. Theoretically, it's a stabilizer. It's a shoulder-mounted stabilizer, and there's a GoPro on the end of it. And so you would take this thing, you put it on, you turn it on your camera, record it. This is one of the 360-degree cameras. You walk around with this ridiculous thing on, and it's taking video the whole time. And then later on, you can load that into like your Oculus and sort of relive the immersive experience. And I think this is a good example of why we're talking about generative AI use cases, because for a lot of people, they're very much as the what the heck is this thing? I mean, what's going on? Right?
I
And
think my
then
initial reaction was just no.
exactly, exactly. It's like, what the heck is this thing? Why is it even here?
Mhm.
What is it supposed to do? Like, what even is this thing? What's it supposed to do? And then, okay, well, once you understand what it's supposed to do, then how do you apply that knowledge of what the thing is supposed to do? And then, of course, you have to say, like, does it actually do it? Unsurprisingly, this sounds very familiar, right?
Well, so before we get into the obvious answer of the 5 Ps, I have questions. So you said it theoretically is a stabilizer. So does that mean it's not? Does it work? And why wouldn't you just be present in the moment and not need to have like a I don't know what an Oculus is, but I assume like a VR recreation of the thing. So go.
See, this is though is exactly what we want to do with use case analysis and understanding. So, does it work? No. The reason it doesn't work is because all of these elastic straps do not make a secure connection to your body, which means it's bouncing around. So your footage is
Right.
bouncing around too. Exactly. So this
Ay,
does
ay,
not
ay.
work. This is actually a leftover from our old agency days. I bought it back then to try and do immersive
Huh.
video, and it does not work. The camera works great. Why would you even want that? Well, because you're at some place where you want immersive video to be able to, yes, relive later, but also be able to share. When you do 360 video, you can cut out snippets, so you don't have to worry about getting something in frame. Like,
Mhm.
everything's in frame. So you'd be able to capture key moments. You would wear this, for example, if you were at a concert, assuming you're permitted to do so, a concert, a conference, any kind of thing where there's some kind of virtual experience you want to be able to look back on later. Especially, like, I take stuff like this with me when I travel if I can, because there's some places that I'm like, I don't know that I'm ever going to get back here again. So I want to be able to look at a lot of that data. When we're talking about generative AI and use cases, it's very similar. It's like, okay, what is the thing? What's it supposed to do? Does it do it? Right? Is it bouncing, creating the equivalent of just bouncing around footage? Um, and then, great. So I understand what it does. How am I supposed to use it and get value out of it?
Okay. That makes a little more sense. Um, so if we're thinking about the generative AI use cases, then yes, I agree that the 5 Ps is a really good place to start. So for those unfamiliar, or just as a refresher, the Trust Insights 5P framework is purpose, people, process, platform, performance. Purpose, what is the question I'm answering? What is the problem I'm trying to solve? People, who's involved internally, externally? Process, how am I going to do the thing in a repeatable, scalable way? Platform, what are the tools that I need? And performance, did I answer the question? Did I solve the problem? Very straightforward, um, but it can be used a lot of different ways. So today we're going to be using it to figure out AI use cases. And so,
Exactly.
Chris, I know you were actually writing about use cases yesterday on LinkedIn. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
We can, and I think that's a good example of a use case. But if I think we first should start talking about what like, again, back to the ridiculous thing, like with generative AI, what does it even do, right? Like most people's interactions with generative AI is going to be in one of two ways. It's going to be in image generation, and it's like, or it's going to be in language generation. So tools like Midjourney for image generation, tools like ChatGPT for text generation. Those are the two kind of big branches. And what they do is that they ingest data you give it, either in a form of a prompt or a prompt plus some information. They rely on their own knowledge that they've been trained with, and then they produce data, typically in the form of whatever you told it to do. Write a blog post, create a corporate strategy, help me write a letter to my favorite celebrity, whatever the thing is. That's what the tools broadly do. They take in data, they transform it and adjust it, and they put out more data.
Okay. So then where do we start with figuring out what my use cases are? And I don't mean me specifically, I just mean sort of the general you, because the way that, for example, the way that I use generative AI is different from how you use generative AI. And I think that's an important thing to note because a lot of companies, at least from my perspective, are basically saying, like, here's generative AI, use it. But when you start to look at the individuals in a company, every single person has a different set of needs. So they're going to use it in a different way. So just thrusting upon them one way to use a tool that does a lot of things is a recipe for disaster.
It is. So the first thing you have to figure out when you're talking about any tool like generative AI is, okay, well, yeah, it takes in data, processes it, and puts out data, but that's really vague. What are the specific ways that you can do it? And there's 6 specific ways. There's generation. You give it instructions and it makes something. There's extraction. You give it something and some data and say, pull out portion of data from here. There is summarization. You give it a prompt to say, here's big data, turn it into small data. There's rewriting. Here's data in one format, turn it into another format. From, rewrite this memo in a professional tone of voice to translate this into Ukrainian. You're transforming the data. 5th is classifying data. Here's some data. Help me organize it. Help me understand it better. Help me understand characteristics of it. And then 6th is synthesis. Here is a bunch of data. Glue it together or put it in one place, and then let me ask questions of it. Let me transform it into other things, but I want to merge and then transform data. So those are the big 6 use case categories for generative AI, at least with language models particularly. And so part of the use case categorization is in the 5 Ps, looking at something like process and saying, well, what do I currently do? Of the things that I currently do, which of those tasks or parts of those tasks fits in one of those 6 general categories? And then is it appropriate to use AI to do that task? So to your question, the other day we were talking about categorizing content on the Trust Insights website, categorizing our blog specifically. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, like a lot of companies, we deprioritize ourselves in terms of our own website maintenance, content cataloging. We just don't have a dedicated resource to do it. So it's sort of a whoever has time kind of picks up the ball. And what I was asking was based on a post that Chris had written a few months ago about how he had applied a content categorization analysis to the content on his website that basically told him, here are the things you're writing about. Here's what we suggest you sort of cluster them as, and then you could sort of figure out the gaps from there. And so I wanted to do the same thing with the Trust Insights content, because when we started the company 6.5 years ago, it was myself and Chris henpecking against the website, hoping that we were going to remember to add categories to our content. And so now, where we publish multiple pieces of content a day, every day, it's going to be a lot to go back one by one to say, okay, are these categorized correctly? Our services have evolved. Are these pieces of content in the right place? Are they missing categorization? And so, Chris, you were able to use generative AI to start the process. So at least right now, we know what things are categorized as. Now the next step is going to be figuring out what should they be categorized as. So that'll be the next step in the analysis. But it's a use case that's specific to us, but I can see probably other marketing teams would want to use it because it helps searchability on your website. It helps if you're doing cornerstone content. So you have your anchor piece and all of the supporting pieces. And then it helps sort of know, like, did I even write about this thing yet? How much have I written about this thing yet? Where can I easily find resources to point people to about this question that they keep asking?
Exactly. So what we did was we wrote some code to take the website, take our blog posts, and then apply some basic classification. So this is use case number 5. We're classifying the text content of our blog posts. And then in the middle of it all, we had a bit of a pivot because we realized that a language model can be directed to do more than just classification. It can also be used to do scoring, to do synthesis, right? So it's a form of summarization. And so what we've got running now is taking every post and then taking our ideal customer profile, which you learned about or should have learned about on previous episodes of both the live stream and the podcast. And if you have not had a chance to go, that you can get the back issues at trustinsights.ai/YouTube. What it's doing now is it's taking our ideal customer profile that you generated, Katie, and it is scoring every post and saying, how likely is it that this post, this blog post, this newsletter, this live stream transcript, whatever, would be satisfying to our ideal customer profile? And this process, for us, we got 1,400 pieces of content. You could do this by hand. You would be doing it for a very long time. But instead, it's processing the data piece by piece and appending the scores to our internal data set. And then what we will do with that after is look at several things. Number one, we're going to look at, I call this alignment, our content alignment score. Over time, is it going up or is it going down, right? Are we getting further away from what the ICP wants or getting closer to it? Hopefully, we're getting closer to it. 2, are there specific branches of content that have higher scores? Does the podcast score higher with our ICP? Does our live stream? Does our newsletter? Do our data diaries? Does Katie's cold opens? Because we have good taxonomy on our website, we can bucket the URLs with their associated scores and say, like, yeah, the podcast is killing it. It's good for our ICP, but our live stream's kind of all over the place. It's not, the scores aren't consistent, so we know we need to focus more on it. And so this is a classification tool being used with generative AI. So that's what that use case is.
Which I think is, it's interesting because it did evolve out of where we originally started for what we wanted to do with it. So if we go back to the 5 Ps, and if you want your own instant insights, you can go to trustinsights.ai/5P framework and get a worksheet for how to run through the 5 Ps. So we started with the purpose was I want to be able to make sure that my content is categorized correctly. So I need to understand the current state, the people, it's you and me, the process, well, and also our ideal customer profile. Because I think that that's sort of where people forget is like, it's not just the people doing it, it's who's the end user of the thing. And we needed to be mindful of what they wanted, which is where our ICP came into play. Process, it's, a variety of things, including writing code, platform, our website, our content, the code, et cetera, et cetera. And then the performance, our measure of success. The measure of success is that we are offering content the way that people want it. That I guess if we were to have to like put numbers to it, like that the visits to specific pieces of content go up, or engagement on social when we post certain pieces of content go up. So there's ways to measure, did we get it right? This is our use case. So let's talk about how people get to their own use case. And the way that people get to their own use case is to start with the purpose. What is the problem you're trying to solve? So the problem you're trying to solve isn't, I need to find a use case to use generative AI. The problem you're trying to solve is, I need to find efficiencies, or I need to increase sales, or I need to generate content faster, or I need to reach the right people, or I need to increase profit margins, or, whatever the thing is. That's your purpose. Then you go through the other pieces to find your specific use cases.
Exactly. And one of the things that we don't think about enough with generative AI is that we tend to think of generative AI as the objective. And even when it spits out something like an ideal customer profile, we think that is the performance. Like that we did the thing. But
Mhm.
we don't think about it in terms of ordered effects. Just because you have an ideal customer profile does not mean you have something useful, right? You have a piece of data. You still now need to activate that data and do something with it. You need to ask questions of it. You need to score your existing content against it, and so on and so forth. So whatever the generative AI use case you're tackling is, it then has to have second and third and fourth order effects of what are you going to do with that thing. So in this case, with our code, the outcome is an alignment score. That's not the end purpose, because yeah, it's cool. It's a number. You can make a chart out of it. But what do you do with it? You then say, okay, well, now I know that the podcast is not well aligned. Okay, well, then what's the next step? What's the so what? So what is we need to do a better job scripting our podcast, right? We need to do topics in advance and score them against the ICP to say, like, yep, this is the topic we got to do. Maybe it's not the thing we're most excited about, but it's what's going to help the audience the most.
Well, and I think that that's the interesting thing about a lot of this is, when you go through the 5 Ps, when you get to people, you may just be the person pushing the buttons, but the end result may not be about you. And I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong. So, the problem I'm trying to solve is, I need to generate more content. Why? You need a user story. So as the content marketer, I want to generate more content so that I can reach my audience. So it's about your audience. It's about being helpful or informing the people that you want to reach. And so when you go back to the 5 Ps, the problem you're trying to solve is create more content. The people, it's you and your ICP. So it's about what they need, not about what you need. And so I think, Chris, that was an important point to bring up, because a lot of times we're looking at using generative AI is, how does it make it better for me? What's fun for me? And those are important things to consider. But in a business, it's likely going to go beyond just you, the individual.
Exactly. Now, other ways to use these things, you have to almost reverse engineer kind of from the performance. Like, what are you doing now, and what's the performance of it now?
Mhm.
I'll give you a real good example. Writing scopes of work. So it's something that we do as a B2B management consulting firm all the time. I don't enjoy it. It is not a fun task. I enjoy having the conversation. I love talking to people about the challenges they're facing. I love talking to people about possible solutions. I don't love all right, now I have to turn this into a piece of paper that someone has to review and sign. And so the consequences of me not loving it happens down in both the performance and the process side. The process side is I cut corners, and the performance outcome is the scopes of work are not complete. They don't cover what the customer cares about. And sometimes if I forget something really important, then we're kind of stuck with what we said we would do in the contract instead of what we should be doing. So the use case here for generative AI is not just to write the scope faster, to get an unpleasant task done faster, but to write it faster and better. To say, okay, you know what, Chris, you do a mediocre job because you don't want to do this task. Let's let a machine do the first draft so that it's comprehensive, so that it covers the main points, so that it's coherent. Like, hey, you listed a bunch of things in tactics and there's no deliverables for any of them, or the deliverables are a mismatch for the tactics, or you said in the tactics it's going to take 6 weeks, and in the timeline you said it's going to take 2 weeks. Which one is it? So the use case there, going back to is partly generation, but it's also summarization, because you'll take something like a call transcript and say, here's what we talked about, summarize this down, and then generate a scope of work from it. And now you've got two different use case categories together, like Lego blocks or like Voltron's Lion robots, putting together to create something that's better than what the person would have done alone, when the person isn't going to do as good a job as a machine.
In that use case, have you measured the performance to see if the scopes that you use generative AI to write are better and or close more?
I have not done an assessment of whether they close more. I have qualitative feedback, mainly from you, that there are fewer comments like, this is missing. What, there's more of, what does this mean? Or what are you trying to say? Or did you write this machine? But less of, where's this? This is not here. This, like you're missing this piece. You're missing this piece and stuff. So it's now a question of things no longer missing that are obvious, or things that make no sense whatsoever. It's now, this isn't clear. Explain this more. Or is this too much explanation? Because sometimes our tools get verbose.
It's interesting because either way, the scopes need human reviewer, typically me. And it's easier to cut back than it is to add more, because I wasn't there for the conversation. So I don't know what's missing. Or I can't say, well, you have 6 weeks here, you have, 9 weeks here. Which one is it? So I will say, in terms of, is for lack of a better term, like all the pieces aligning, it's better for that. And then it just needs to be streamlined a bit. But it's much easier to streamline something once you have all of the information or more than you need, than it is to sort of go, well, I have 3 of the 8 things. Where are the other 5 going to come from? So it is definitely better in that respect. I will say that.
Yep. And this is a critical thing about generative AI use cases, is you don't have to hand over everything to AI. You shouldn't hand over everything to AI. Nor should you hand over the things to AI that you enjoy doing. There's this bizarre sort of belief that AI is going to take over everything, and that you will no longer be able to do the work that you enjoy. No, the purpose of AI is to do stuff that you direct it to do. So if there's something you enjoy doing, if you're a person who likes writing scopes of work, and I know there are business development people who do, if you like that, don't hand that to a machine, right? Hand off something else to a machine that you don't enjoy doing.
And for me, that's creating PowerPoint presentations. That is the bane of my existence. And so my specific use case, and I was asking around our team earlier this week, was, so my use case, the purpose for me is, as a speaker, I need to create a supplemental PowerPoint deck so that the audience can follow along with what I'm talking about at an event. People, it's me, but it's also the audience at the event. Process, I've built the outline. I know the pieces I want to talk about. I've thought about our ICP and the information they want to learn. So I've put the pieces together. Platform, I use generative AI to help me, put my thoughts together that I had, given to Katie GPT. And I was like, help me frame out a talk. And now I need to put that outline into a PowerPoint deck. And so I'm actually looking for generative AI to do it for me, because I already know. The thing is, I just don't want to sit there and copy and paste text into a slide. Like, I just don't want to do it. It is so mind numbing for me. And I usually don't mind the monotonous tasks, but this one in particular, like, I just don't want to do it. So I'm actually looking for generative AI to do it for me. The performance not being that I got a PowerPoint deck done, but that I got a supplemental deck completed that helps the audience at my talk follow along and understand, and so that the information resonates with them.
Exactly. And now you've run into issues where like there aren't a lot of tools that do that well. And the reason
Hmm.
for that goes back to where we started the episode, which is that there's two different major models in generative AI. There's diffusers, which make images, and there's transformers, which make text. Transformers generally don't do a good job of making images. That's not what their architecture supports. Diffusers can't do text. And so you are taking a task that is taking text and turning it into an image, which should theoretically be a diffusion task. However, what's important is that the content itself makes it into the image, and that's something that diffusers can't do because diffusers can't understand language. And so you have this case where this task is really almost symbolic in some way as opposed to literal, and neither model does a good job of it together. They each have their own separate strengths. So a really important part of generative AI use case identification is understanding what kind of task are we doing,
Hmm.
and is the technology capable of doing that. And in this case, that is that big conceptual leap from text to image that reflects the content of the text, and the tools today are not up to that.
Well, and that's assuming that I want a bunch of images. I don't mind if the text itself makes it into a PowerPoint and then I have to put in some images of my own. But I just don't want to go through and like structure the deck itself with all the words and the thing. Like,
Oh, okay. Well, so
just let someone else do it.
this is an interesting point then, because you're now talking about something that is partly language based and partly not. So the way that you would handle that, and again, this is use case development, right, is to say, what is the tool? What is it capable of? In this case, arranging a coherent structure for a presentation is a language task. And that is 100% something the tools can do. Say slide one, slide two, slide three. This is what should be on each slide.
Hmm.
Making the presentation is not a language task. That is a file task that a programming language like Python can do. Python can make PowerPoint slides and glue them together into a deck. What Python can't do is write the slides for you. So in this case, your use case is a combination of a pure language task and then having a language model write the code to make the slides to put the text into. That is a doable thing. However, it is a more advanced use case because you're now getting into Python coding. And it may or may not be the best use of your time. Now, is it a fun problem to solve? Absolutely. I would do that for fun. But
Well, but I think to that of being best use of your time, I think it really depends on how often, and this gets into the repeatability. So one of the ways that we start to document these use cases is with our trips framework. You could find that at trustinsights.ai/trips. And so it's time, repeatability, importance, pleasantness, and sufficient data. So in this case, if I'm thinking about creating a PowerPoint deck, the time longer than it should take because I'm going to drag my feet, but let's call it 2 hours, give or take. Repeatability, it's a talk that I can use over and over again. So I would say it has high repeatability. Importance, well, they expect me to give something when I get on stage. So I'd say it's highly important that I get it done. Pleasantness, 0. I enjoy giving the talk. I don't enjoy making the slides. So, but that's what we're talking about is 0. And sufficient data is great because I already outlined the whole talk.
exactly. So if you've got the outline, now you have to give the model a prompt for turning the outline into slides.
Mhm.
And then secondarily, having a model build the Python script to take the slide data and one by one create the slides in PowerPoint format in a file on your computer. That's how you would approach this particular use case.
All right. So people wanting to break into the AI powered market, take note. This is a use case that I guarantee I am not the only person who wants a system to just take the information and make a PowerPoint deck. So if someone invents that thing, let me know. Hit me up. I'm ready to be your beta tester. I will give you a testimonial. Like I'm ready to not have to make a PowerPoint deck ever again.
Do we want to try and engineer that live, or at least a facsimile of that?
Sure. Let me send you my outline.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'm going to fire up, in this case, I'm going to use Google's Gemini 1.5, the Pro model. And we're going to start off with the pair framework. So if you're not familiar, the pair framework is from Trust Insights. All of these things, by the way, are totally free. There's not even a form to fill out. I'm going to start off with a pair prompt, and I'm going to say our topic today is creating a compelling slide presentation outline. What's the topic?
Managing the people who manage the machines.
Managing the people who manage AI technology. So that's going to be, I'm going to put that in quotes just so the model knows to do that. And now it's going to start creating, I need to turn off this banner here. It's going to start creating the pair framework. So we have, it automatically choose the role because that's what it's designed to do. It's going to outline the best practices. This is priming the model. So developing a clear and concise message, structuring outline, think visually. It's then going to move automatically into the augment phase here. Common mistakes from creating a presentation outline about managing the people who manage the machines. It's then going to look at some of the truths and falsehoods. So what are the things that are generally true, but maybe false? What are the things that are generally considered false, but might be true? So it's going to go ahead and do that, and then tell me my expert tips and tricks for this particular task. So we've got now the model priming done, and again, this is by the way, this is something that we teach in our AI course, which is completely not free.
Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry. All right. So we're gonna now say, great. I'm now going to provide you with the outline of a talk. I'd like you to separate the outline into individual slides. No slide should contain more than one key concept. We want very few words per slide. Here is the outline. And we'll take your Imagine the People Who Manage the Machines talk. Convert this into a slide-by-slide outline as instructed. So we've got this lovely outline. And now slide 1, name, slide 2, etc. Yeah, image, text, and so on and so forth. So now it's going to create our individual slides. And this alone, it would be copy paste, a decent amount of copy paste, but this alone
definitely gets me closer to the end goal.
Exactly. We're at step 4. Now we're going to say next, I need to pull in my Python coding instructions because I have a long list of things that are good Python coding practices. This is at 8 pages of coding. So I'm going to load that in system instructions. Let's see. Next, I'd like you to outline a Python script that will take each of the slides text from the above outline and generate a PowerPoint slide. The script should create one single presentation composed of multiple slides. Choose the appropriate Python packages to complete this task. Optionally, we can include a CSV of slide number and slide text if it will make the process easier. Adhere to best practices as detailed in the system instructions and produce the skeleton of the script first. So let's see what it comes up with. This is now, so we're now switching contexts from making the presentation itself and all the best practices to making the PowerPoint itself. So you can see here that, go away. So it's now starting to create the outline of the code. This is actually already pretty good. You can see here that it's got the main script execution section. It's got slide data. It details the libraries we need, how it's going to handle image handling. If you want to specify images, you could do that. So this is a very interesting little thing here. You could, if you wanted to get super crazy, you could ask the script to include an API call to something like Midjourney or OpenAI's DALL-E or Meta AI and say, here's the text for the slide, create an image, return the image, and then have the script put it actually on the slide. Now, I don't know how good it would be, but it would be interesting.
But for some people, that's going to work.
Yes, exactly. And so now you would go through standard software development lifecycle stuff. You would take the code, test the code, augment it. Every time it throws an error, come back and say, here's the error, fix it, until you get a working piece of software. So in the span of 6.5 minutes, we've taken your outline, turned it into a slide outline, and then built the skeleton for actually creating the PowerPoint deck.
Which is still faster than me putting everything into a PowerPoint deck, procrastinating, whining about it, closing it, coming back to it, telling people how much I hate it, then coming back to it. Like, the process takes much longer than it should because, much like you writing scopes, it's not something I enjoy. So it's going to take longer than it should because I could just sit down and power through and do it. But let's be realistic. When we're doing things we don't like, we just don't tend to do that. We put them on the back burner. We do them last. We give them the least amount of effort. And let me be clear. I love the topic. I love speaking about the topic. It's literally just putting a slide deck together that I don't enjoy. So I want people to know I am happy to talk about it with you, with your team, with anyone on a stage. Just give me a second to put the slides together.
And in terms of building the generative AI use case, one of the things that we did here that I think is really important to highlight is building the presentation seems like it's a task, but it's not. It's a container. What we've done here is we've broken that task up into individual pieces. First, take the outline and convert it into a slide outline, a very granular task. Then take the slide outline, turn it into a CSV. Okay, then take the CSV and put it into a Python script, and then the Python script converts it into a PowerPoint. So what seems like a task of make a slide deck is in fact multiple tasks bundled together. And if you want to unlock generative AI use cases, a big part of the process is decomposing your tasks into their subtasks and saying, okay, that is a language problem we can solve. That's a coding problem we can solve. That's not a problem we can solve.
And I want to go back to something you said about as you're identifying the use cases, there's a misconception that just because AI can do it doesn't mean it should do it. So if you're someone, for example, who enjoys putting together PowerPoint presentations, also get in touch with me. But like AI doesn't have to do that if you really enjoy it and you're really good at it. I personally don't feel the need to use AI for writing a contract because it's something that I don't mind doing. Is it my favorite thing? No, but it's certainly not the lowest on my list of things that I don't like doing. So I wouldn't necessarily use AI for that. So my use case and your use case, Chris, are just different.
Exactly. And other things is, again, looking at the way the technology itself works. So if we go back to our discussion earlier about taking our blog and scoring our blog post by post, this is, even if you enjoyed the task once, doing it 1,400 times in a row, this is an incredibly repetitive task. And so having a language model perform this particular task is the only sane way to do it. And get good results. However, even with this task, you still need experts in the process. So part of when we created this use case, there are two halves of it. One is the technological capabilities to extract data out of WordPress, normalize the tables, turn it into a single table that AI could analyze. Then testing out 5 different models to see which one created the best result. And that was not the role of the AI or the AI engineer. That's the role of you, the subject matter expert, to say, like, yeah, I agree with these scores more than these scores.
Mm-hmm. And that actually, so now you can talk about that LinkedIn post. That's what you were writing about yesterday, was the need for the subject matter expert and the technological expert and the technology itself. And that's like the magic formula of making these things work the way you want them to.
Exactly. So just as a quick example, this is from yesterday. We had the spreadsheet of the different pieces of content. Each model came up with scores, and we obviously had a look at what the content was, and you knew based on our ideal customer profile, because you built the ideal customer profile, whether or not a model was making good judgment or not, and which models made really good judgment. You would look at a certain piece of content and go, our ICP wouldn't be interested in that. And so if it got really high scores from a particular model, you would know that model is not interpreting the prompt properly. Its scoring algorithm is not good, and therefore, it gets disqualified. We ended up settling on Meta's Llama 3.18b model because its scores were the most closely aligned to what the human reviewer said. Yeah, this is the closest to reality.
Mm-hmm.
With use cases, part of use case development is having this human review to say, okay, as you're doing your AI test cases and your pilots, part of that performance is, it's not just wait for the project to be done, it's iterative. You have a lot of milestones along the way, say like, yeah, it's doing what's supposed to, or no, it's not.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's another misconception, is that you just hand it off to AI and then step back and go, did it do the thing? And we've talked about this in different different places, but one of the challenges with using AI well is that it takes time. It takes a lot of human intervention. It's not enough to just give it a one-line prompt. It didn't do the thing, get frustrated, throw your hands up, walk away. Like, well, AI can't do that. We've shown, yes, more technical examples, but we had to actually give it the pair framework. We had to start with race. We had to follow up with pair. We had to be mindful of the 5 Ps. We had to think about, is this a task that we even should be doing with AI? And all of that upfront prep work is going to get you to, okay, these are the things I can do with AI that make sense for me. And then you can start to measure, did I do it? Am I more efficient? Am I increasing profit margins? Am I doing whatever the problem it was I was trying to solve?
Exactly. And going back to the thinking about, can AI even do it? We were working on another example yesterday of taking our keyword list from our SEO and our content marketing strategy and saying, here's our ideal customer profile. What is the likelihood that our ideal customer profile would even search for this term? Right? We're leveraging the power of language, because this is clearly a language task. Wrap it in some code and then say, okay, now here's our 1,500 term keyword list. Score every keyword based on the likelihood that our ICP would search for that term. And then and now we have a new version of our keyword list that is, we're called an ICP aligned keyword list. So just because a term gets a lot of search traffic doesn't mean it's a good choice for content strategy, because it may be about something that your ideal customer does not care about and wouldn't search for. Like we were talking about affiliate marketing. So our ICP, that's very much a B2C thing, not a B2B thing. And we serve a lot more B2B. And so that scored very low in the algorithm. And when you looked at it, you're like, that's very low. Like, yeah, that means it's working, because it's saying our ideal customer would look at this. So this is a case we have, the purpose is we want a keyword list that's focused on the things our customers would search for, so that we're creating good content. Our performance is very clearly get more search about from the right people. And then the people process and platform was building the technology, and then you and I reviewing it and to create this, not only the use case, but then the actual output of this is an ICP aligned keyword list.
What's interesting, and it's really easy to digress and talk about the ICP more, but if you want to learn more about what we're doing with building ideal customer profiles, the service isn't on our website as of yet, but it will be. But we are, developing and rolling out that ICP service, because one of the things that I've learned through doing even just the exercise we were doing yesterday with we built our ICP and then we have the keyword list is now we have a tool that shifts the focus. So when we created the keyword list, we created it with the lens of what do we want to be known for? So it was about us, not about our customer. Now we have basically a synthetic customer to use for brainstorming. And we can say, just because this is what we want to be known for, doesn't mean this is what the customer wants. And we are going to be able to, over the next few months, basically shift the focus off of what we think to what the customer actually wants. And I feel like that's going to be such a more powerful strategy for us, rather than saying, well, we want to be known for, data science. Well, guess what? That's not what our customers care about. And if we want to get more of our type of customer, we need to give them what they want, not what we think they want. And so that's sort of like my little plug for, if you want to know more about how you can get your own ideal customer profile, you can reach out to us at trustinsights.ai/contact. But it's going to help you when you're trying to figure out those AI use cases. If you know who your customer is and what they want, you can then align that to the things that you're currently doing, to your services, and then figure out where AI fits in appropriately.
Exactly. So we started this live stream with the crazy contraption.
I already forgot about that. I already
blocked it.
What is the
crazy contraption? Why does the crazy contraption exist? What does it even do? And how does it work? What are the use cases for?
That is so silly.
It is absolutely silly, but it highlights the point of when you're building generative AI use cases, you need to know what the technology is capable of, what it's not good at, whether it does it or not. Then from there, you need to say, well, how does it do the thing it does? The 6 major use cases of generative AI. Then you take your 5 Ps. What do we want more? We want to save time, save money, make money. What tasks do those things? We then start to decompose those tasks into their individual components and say, can generative AI do all of these, some of these, none of these? And from there, you've got a use case, a generative AI use case. Our use cases can outline talks very easily, can build PowerPoint slides less easily, can't do the fit and polish on the final slide. So that the task is not totally done by AI, but parts of it can be. And I think that's the best methodology today for building generative AI use cases, to go through all of these steps together and ultimately arrive at if this task, going back to our TRIPS framework, if this task consumes an inordinate amount of time, like reading 1,400 blog posts, it's worth your time to use generative AI for it. Any final parting thoughts, Katie?
I can't wait until generative AI can make my PowerPoints for me. That's all I care about right now.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's live stream. We will see you all on the next one. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and our weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.